Today I'm talking about chapter 15 of How to Read Literature Like a Professor, Flights of Fancy. And so Foster opens the chapter with a story. We're talking about how humans can't fly, but in a bunch of stories that we make up, like superheroes and stuff like that, we have tried very hard. And going back to Icarus and the Greeks getting to fly. So the second thought that he poses in the chapter is, what is the meaning of literary flight? And to examine this question, he brings up a couple examples. Um, Song of Solomon book, Night at a Circus, and E.T., and kind of from those, looking at looking at each book, kind of what does flight mean to those characters in each book as he goes through the examples. And when he comes to his flight is freedom. When people are allowed to fly, they experience freedom, and when they are bound from flight, they experience the slavery in the Song of Solomon book. E.T., kind of same thing. When they take off, it kind of is a escape and freedom and represents magic in the sense that the adults don't believe of what can happen here. And in Night of the Circus, it's kind of used in a different way. And this is where Foster brings in the idea that irony trumps everything. So in Night at a Circus, we have this female trapeze artist, whose name is Fevers, which kind of sounds like feathers, reinforcing this flying aspect. But being a trapeze artist, you're kind of confined flight. You know, she can only do it in the circus tent and not outside in the real world. And so it's kind of irony here comes into play when, though flying represents freedom, she is caged in a sense. Then Foster goes into another example of a book. I shortened it to The Old Man with Wings. The full title is A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings. And reading through this book, this guy comes down, but eventually he gets caged. And so, once again, interesting that this guy who can fly is confined. So, flight being freedom, the author works against that in showing confinement. So, another thing to look at in flight is, what does the end of a flight mean? Because in most of the books, flight isn't mentioned literally, but kind of in a figurative sense. But in the end of a flight, sometimes people fall, like in Icarus. But what does it mean when they fall? And usually it means kind of there's a change in the character. If they survive the crash, then the character changes in some sort of way, so be paying attention for that. And then, so the final thoughts that Foster leaves us with is free a spirit, and he talks about kind of the spirit and how if the spirit is allowed to be free, then that's often referred to as flight of the spirit. And his last point in his closing paragraph is, let your imagination take flight. And in that, he's meaning, let your imagination be free. That's chapter 15. I hope that was helpful.